Welcome to another special edition of That's a Good Cup of Joe. And this is the continuation of our pilgrimage through the Constitution. So since we finished all the articles of the Constitutions and their amendments, we're now continuing onward with the Federalist Papers. Now, this is going to be a long haul, so I'm thankful for everyone who is still hanging in there as we get through this, because remember, there are over 80 plus articles that went into the Federalist Papers as a means of educating the 13 colonies in the hopes of getting them to understand the necessity of moving from the Articles of the Confederacy to this new Constitution that they're looking to ratify. So we left off with Federalist number 7. Now we're up to Federalist Papers number 8. Now this one goes into the consequences of hostilities between the states. Now this was from the New York Packet on Tuesday, November 20th, 1787, and this was authored again by Alexander Hamilton. Alexander Hamilton. You know, every time I say Alexander Hamilton, I just feel like I got to break out into a song and routine, but there you go. That's my nerdy part. But let's get into business. And we're going to start off with, to the people of the state of New York. Assuming it, therefore, as an established truth that the several states, in case of disunion or such combinations of them as might happen to be formed out of the wreck of the General Confederacy, would be subject to the vicissitudes of peace and war, of friendship and enmity with each other, which have fallen to the lot of all neighboring nations not united under one government. Let us enter into concise detail of some of the consequences that would attend such a situation. War between the states, in the first period of their separate existence, will be accompanied with much greater distress than it commonly is in those countries where regular military establishment have been long obtained. The disciplined armies always kept on foot on the continent of Europe, though they bear a malign aspect to liberty and economy, have notwithstanding been productive of the single advantage of rendering sudden consequences impractical, and of preventing that rapid dissolution which used to mark the progress of war prior to their introduction. The art of fortification was contributed to the same ends. The nations of Europe are encircled with chains of fortified places, which mutually obstruct invasion. Campaigns are wasted in reducing 2 or 3 frontier garrisons to gain admittance into the enemy's country. Similar impediments occur at every step to exhaust the strength and delay the progress of an invader. Formerly, the invading army would penetrate into the heart of the neighboring country almost as soon as intelligence of its approach could be received. But now a comparatively small force of disciplined troops acting on the defensive with the aid of posts is able to impede and finally to frustrate the enterprises of one much more considerable. The history of war in that quarter of the globe is no longer a history of nations subdued and enemies overturned, but of towns taken and retaken, of battles that decide nothing, of retreats more beneficial than victories, of much effort and little acquisitions. In this country, the scene would be together reverse. The jealousy of military establishments would postpone them as long as possible. The want of fortifications leaving the frontiers of one state open to another will facilitate inroads. The populous states would, with little difficulty, overrun their less populous neighbors. Consequences would be as easy to be made as difficult to be retained. War, therefore, would be dissolutionary and predatory. Plunder and devastation ever march in the terrain of irregulars. The calamities of individuals would make the principal figure in the events which would characterize our own military exploits. This picture is not too highly wrought, though. I confess it would not long remain as just one. Safety from external danger is the most powerful director of national conduct. Even the adherent love of liberty will, after a time, give way to its dictates. The violent destruction of life and property incident to war, the continual effort and alarm attendant on the state of continual danger, will compel nations that most attached to liberty to resort for repose and security to institutions which have a tendency to destroy their civil and political rights. To be more safe, they at length become willing to run the risk of being less free. The institutions chiefly allude that they are standing armies and correspondent appendages of military establishment. Standing armies, it is said, are not provided against in the new Constitution, and it is therefore inferred that they may exist under it. Their existence, however, from the very terms of the proposition is, at most, problematical and uncertain. But standing armies, it may be replied, must inevitably result from the dissolution of the Confederacy, frequent war and constant apprehension which require a state of a consistent preparation will infallibly produce them. The weaker states or confederacies would first have recourse to them to put themselves upon it equally with their more potent neighbors. They would endeavor to supply the inferiority of the populations and resources by a more regular and effective system of defense, by disciplined troops, and by fortifications. They would at the same time be necessitated to strengthen the executive arm of the government, in doing which their constitutions will require a progressive direction toward monarchy. It is of the nature of war to increase the executive at the expense of the legislative authority. The expedients would have been mentioned would soon give the states or confederacies that made use of them a superiority over their neighbors. Small states or states of less natural strength under vigorous governments and with the assistance of disciplined armies have often triumphed over large states or states of greater natural strength which have been destituted of these advantages. Neither the pride nor the safety of the more independent states or confederacies would permit them long to submit to this mortifying and advantageous superiority. They would quickly resort to means similar to those by which has been effected, to reinstate themselves in their less preeminence. Thus, we should, in a little time, see established in every part of this country the same engines of despotism which have been the scourge of the old world. This, at least, would be the natural course of things, and our reasonings will be more likely to be just in proportion as they accommodate to this standard. These are not vague inferences drawn from supposed or speculative defects in the Constitution, the whole power of which is lodged in the hands of a people, or their representatives and delegates. But they are solid conclusions drawn from the natural and necessary progress of human affairs. It may, perhaps, be asked, by way of objection to this, why did not standing armies spring up out of the contentions which has so often distracted the ancient republics of Greece? Different answers, equally satisfactory, may be given to this question. The industrious habits of the people of the present day, absorbed in the pursuits of gains and devoted to the improvements of agricultural and commerce, are incapable with that condition of the nation of soldiers, which was the true condition of the people of those republics. This means of revenue, which have been so greatly multiplied by the increase of gold and silver, and of the arts of industry, and the science of finance, which is the offering of modern times, concurring with the habits of nations, have produced an entire revolution in the system of war, and have rendered disciplined armies distinct from the body of citizens, to the inseparable companions of frequent hostility. There is a wide difference also between military establishments in a country seldom exposed by its situations to internal invasions and in one which is often subject to them and always apprehensive of them. The rulers of the former can have a good pretext, if they are even so inclined, to keep on foot armies so numerous as must be of necessity be obtained in the latter. These armies being in the first case rarely, if at all, called into activity of inferior defense, the people are in no danger of being broken to military subordination. The laws are not accustomed to relaxation in favor of military exigencies. The civil state remains in full vigor, neither corrupted nor confounded with the principles of prepossess of the other states. The smallness of the army renders the natural strength of the community an overmatch for it, and the citizens not habituated to look up to the military power for protection or to submit to its oppressions, neither love nor fear the soldiery. They view them with a spirit of jealous acquiescence in a necessary evil and stand ready to resist the power which they suppose may be exerted to the prejudices of their rights. The army under such circumstances may usefully aid the magistrate to suppress a small faction or an occasional mob or insurrection, but it will be unable to enforce encroachments against the united efforts of a great body of people. In a country in the predicament last described, the contrary of all this happens. The perpetual menacings of danger oblige the government to be always prepared to repel. Its armies must be numerous enough for instant defense. The continual necessity for their services enhances the importance of the soldier and proportionality degrades the condition of the citizens. The military state becomes elevated above the civil. The inhabitants of territories, often the threat of war, are unavoidable, subject to the frequent infringements on their rights, which serve to weaken their sense of those rights, and by degrees the people are brought to consider the soldiery not only as their protectors, but as their superiors. The transition from this disposition to that of considering them masters is neither remote nor difficult, but it is very difficult to prevail upon a people under such impressions to make a bold and effectual resistance to usurpations supported by the military power. The kingdom of Great Britain falls within the first description, an insular situation and a powerful marine guarding the great measure against possibility of foreign invasion, supersede the necessity of numerous armies within the kingdom, a sufficient force to make head against a sudden descent till the militia could have time to rally and embody, is all that has been deemed requisite. No motive of national policy has demanded, nor would public opinion have tolerated, the large number of troops upon its domestic establishment. There has been for a long time past little room for the operation of other causes, which have been enumerated as the consequences of internal war. This peculiar felicity of situation has, in a great degree, contributed to preserve the liberty which that country to this day enjoys. In spite of the prevalent venality and corruption, if on the contrary Britain has been situated on the continent and had been compelled, as she would have been by that situation, to make her military establishment at home coexistive with those of the other great powers of Europe, she, like them, would in all probability be, at this day, a victim to the absolute power of a single man. Tea is possible, through not easy, that the people of this island may be enslaved from other causes, but it cannot be by the prowess of an army so inconsiderable as that which has been usually kept up within the kingdom. If we are wise enough to preserve the Union, we may, for ages, enjoy the advantages similar to that of an insulated situation. Europe is a great distance from us. Her colonies in our vicinity will be likely to continue too much disproportion in strength and be able to give us any dangerous annoyance. Extensive military establishments cannot, in this position, be necessary to our security. But if we should be disunited and the integral parts should either remain separate or, which is most probable, should be thrown together into 2 or 3 confederacies, we should be, in a short course of time, in the predicament of the continental powers of Europe, or liberties would be a prey to the means of defending ourselves against the ambitions and jealousies of each other. This is an idea not superficial or futile, but solid and weighty. It deserves the most serious and mature consideration of every prudent and honest man of whatever party. If such men would make a firm and solemn pause, to meditate dispassionately on the importance of this interesting idea, if they would contemplate it at all attitudes and trace it to all its consequences, they will not hesitate to part with trivial objections to the Constitution, the rejection of which would, in all probability, put a final period to the Union. The airy phantoms that flit toward the distempered imagination of some of his adversaries would quickly give place to the more substantial forms of danger, real, certain, and formidable. So, I don't know about you, but I see things that mirror that today. The insurgents, because that's what I'm calling it right now, and that's what I feel it is. With this deportation initiative that Trump and his policies are engaging in, the snatching of individuals and looking to deport them without due process now. No one is saying that, and I think this is the thing that Democrats and supporters of the illegal, those who are deemed to be illegal immigrants in our country, is that though many of them, and the majority of them, may not have committed crimes while in the country, Trump and his sycophants of MAGA see that their crossing the border is the crime, which is why when they're bringing up and rounding up these individuals, they see the crime. But it's not a federal crime, right? It's of a civil nature. So these individuals, and as much as they are trying to get rid of birthright citizenship through the courts in regards to illegal migrants getting into the country, and that their children should not be blessed with this part of the Constitution, this is what the gig is. And if they look to strip that right from them, how far would it take for them to continue to strip rights of citizenship from other people that reside in our country? So this is the military state of our existence right now, is that this masked identified force within our country, who appear to be not part of the government but an outside security force, which a lot of people are starting to refer to them as, are going after these illegals, as they deem them, and looking to get rid of them. But I see that in here, in this document here. And how this came about, I see it. Eggs, prices, the citizens so involved with the financial nature of their internal beings of living, when the existence of what the possible consequences be of Donald Trump's agenda, which is outlined in Project 2025, which has been gone through extensively. Him putting out the price of eggs was the distraction. And the messages saying that, he's going to get rid of these people, the border, ladies and gentlemen, was the tell. Everything else, because we had a growing economy under Joe Biden. But because, as a Democrats tend to believe that their ideology is more elevated and that everyone who's under the Democratic umbrella should just give and understand what they're doing, they do not project or explain themselves, but they just said, let our actions prove, without any real robust explanation or advocacy or messaging, because messaging is the Democrats' problem, because there is no cohesive message when they speak. And if they did, a lot of the things that Joe Biden has done and his government has done would have been put out there. But because of Donald Trump and his administration before, the quiet, deliberative running of the government that Joe Biden was presenting to us, the American people have ADD. They really are. They really do. We can't focus on things and look at it and say that, okay, this thing will work out as time goes on. We expect, and this is our fault, that we have to have everything now. We have to see everything now. Whatever the plan is cannot be for the future. It has to be now. So not able to give forth a real concise message to say exactly what's happening led Donald Trump's voice over the last 4 years and his sycophants to be the message that everyone hears. You understand that? So when they talk about eggs, they keep giving him the grade curve. I don't know how big that grade curve is, because it sounds like it's the circumference of the entire planet. To say, oh yeah, he just says that, but he doesn't really mean it, and how that doesn't penetrate that messaging for us, I just don't get it. But with the states being a unified country to help us with what's out there in the world would serve much better than if we were separate, because if we keep separate and there's no harmony or unity, one could be jealous of the other one can overpower some the other, because there may be more citizens in one confederacy than the other, and they could be overpowered, and then we'd be so consumed with our economics and living that we fall short and not see what the hostilities of the other person. So our next door neighbor may turn out to be our enemy, and then they be wanting to take us over, and then this could be what the downfall was worried about. The downfall of the confederacies at that time, the different states. And that by nature of being together as one country could be more advantageous for all of them. So this is what they're trying to explain. And again, I'm seeing parallels today. The eggs, the finances, the fucking eggs, the price of eggs. You're telling me is what caused the rift that allowed Donald Trump to be president now. That's where we are in America right now. And this is the big worry. Because if they pass that bill, inside it are triggers that will in fact strip any control that Donald Trump has under the Constitution gone. Can't challenge him in court. You got to live with what he gives, and all the military fortitude of his policies being driven right now will be unstoppable. The insurrection has happened, people. The insurrection took place on January 20th. Because that's what we voted. And actually it happened on election day. Okay. All right, so we're done with Article 8. It's a lot heavy. I mean, I'm fearing that the more we go through these different articles in the Federalist Papers, the more will give us insight on exactly what's happening today in our country. Because what was feared back then, ladies and gentlemen, American citizens, we the people, it's happening now. It's happening now. Next up, Federalist Paper number 9. And this is today's Good Cup of Joe.